Look around you. Take a good, hard look at the reality you think you live in. The skyscrapers piercing the clouds, the armies marching across borders, the food on your table, the phone in your hand. It all feels solid, doesn't it? It feels permanent. But I am here to tell you that it is all built on a lie, a terrifying, invisible hallucination that we call money. But the truth is far darker. It is not money. It is debt. Right now, as you watch this, the world is drowning in a blood-red ocean of $315 trillion in debt. This is not a statistic. This is not just a number on a screen. This is a catastrophe waiting to happen. The United States, the so-called leader of the free world, is shackled by over $38 trillion in debt. The European Union is crumbling under $14 trillion. Japan, a technological giant, is suffocating under a mountain of $9 trillion. Even the kings of oil in Saudi Arabia and the industrial dragons of China are chained to this beast. The entire planet is insolvent. But here is the paradox that should make your blood run cold. It's the question that haunts the corridors of power in Davos and Washington. If every single country on earth is in debt, who is the master? If everyone owes money, who is collecting? If the U.S. owes China, and China owes Japan, and Japan owes the U.S., where did the money come from? Are we in debt to Mars? Welcome to the darkest corner of financial history. This is where the mask falls off. Debt is not an accident. It is not a mistake. It is a weapon. It is the architecture of modern slavery. Every war you have ever read about, every financial crash that destroyed your family's savings, every boom that made the rich richer, it all sits on top of this ticking time bomb. And when you follow the fuse all the way to the end, you realize the terrifying truth. The world owes this money to itself. But do not be fooled. This is not a friendly loan between neighbors. This is a circular firing squad, and you are the target. To understand how we became slaves to this system, we must go back to the moment the devil signed the contract. It wasn't in a boardroom with glass walls. It was in the desperation of war, in a candlelit room filled with smoke and greed. The year was 1694. England was bleeding. King William III was locked in a brutal war with France, the 9 Years' War. His war chest was empty. He had soldiers, he had cannons, but he had no gold to pay them. The French were at the door, and the king was broke. Desperate, he turned to the merchants of the city of London. These were not just traders. They were sharks in human skin. They saw an opportunity that would change the course of human civilization. They approached the king with a deal that would curse humanity for centuries. "We will lend you the gold to fight your war," they whispered. "We will save your crown. But in return, you must give us something. You must give us a royal charter to establish a bank, the Bank of England, and you must give us the exclusive right to print money out of thin air and loan it to the government at interest." The king, thinking only of his war, signed the paper, and in that moment the Bank of England was born. It was revolutionary. It was evil. Before this moment, money was gold. It was physical. You couldn't fake it, but the bank introduced a new alchemy. The state could now spend money it didn't have. And the bankers, they received a government bond, a piece of paper that was a promise to pay. But it was more than that. It was a claim on the sweat, blood, and labor of every future generation of British citizens. They were taxing people who hadn't even been born yet. France saw this and copied it. The Netherlands perfected it. And the United States. Under Alexander Hamilton, they built an empire on it. Debt became the new god. The ability to borrow became the ability to conquer. Empires stopped hunting for gold mines. They started hunting for taxpayers. The battlefield turned into a balance sheet, and the soldiers became debt collectors for the banking cartel, For centuries, this system grew, but it had a leash. That leash was gold. Even the most corrupt kings and politicians were limited by the amount of yellow metal in their vaults. If you printed too much paper money, people would eventually demand the gold, and the game would end. That discipline died on August 15, 1971, a day that lives in infamy, a day that should be taught in every school as the moment the middle class was murdered. The United States, under President Richard Nixon, was bleeding gold. The Vietnam War and the massive social programs of the Great Society had bankrupted the nation. Countries like France knew the U.S. was printing more dollars than it had gold, so they sent battleships to New York to demand their gold back. The U.S. vaults were emptying. Nixon had a choice: cut spending and face a recession, or cheat. He chose to cheat. He went on national television and temporarily suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That temporary measure is now 54 years old. In that split second, the anchor was cut. The dollar became pure fiat, Latin for "let it be done." It became paper, confetti backed by nothing but men with guns. This unleashed the debt monster. Without the restriction of gold, there was no limit to how much money could be created or how much debt could be issued. Look at the charts. Look at the graph of U.S. national debt. It is flat for 200 years, and then, in 1971, it goes vertical. It shoots to the moon. We entered the age of creditism. Growth was no longer driven by savings, production, and hard work. It was driven by borrowing, consumption, and speculation. To keep the demand for this new worthless paper high, the U.S. struck another deal, this time with the House of Saud, the petrodollar system. The U.S. promised military protection to the Saudi royal family. In return, Saudi Arabia agreed to price all its oil sales exclusively in U.S. dollars. This forced every country on earth to hold dollars. If you wanted energy, you needed the American greenback. To get dollars, you had to sell your goods to America. America could simply print money to buy the world's resources. It was the greatest scam ever invented, an exorbitant privilege that allowed the U.S. to live beyond its means for 50 years, exporting its inflation to the rest of the world. Fast forward to today, the monster has grown. It is no longer £1 million, it is $315 trillion. It is a number so large it defies human comprehension. Global borrowing increases by $1 trillion every 100 days. Can you feel the speed? It is a runaway train with no brakes, heading for a cliff, and the conductor is pouring gasoline into the engine. Every country owes, every bank lends, every citizen is born into the system as a debtor. Before you take your first breath, before you even have a name, you owe a share of this national nightmare. You are born in the red, but who holds the chain? Let's look at the American giant. $38 trillion. Half of it is owed to American entities, banks, pension funds, mutual funds, and the Federal Reserve itself. The other half? It sits in the vaults of foreign powers. Japan holds $1 trillion. China holds $800 billion. It is a sick, twisted game of mirrors. The U.S. Treasury prints a bond. A bank buys it. The Federal Reserve prints money to buy it back from the bank. The American taxpayer works to pay the interest. It is a snake eating its own tail, forever. And it's not just America. It's a global suicide pact. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S. lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to the developing world. Developing nations lend back to the West by buying treasuries with their reserves. It's a planetary game of hot potato. But the potato is a grenade, and the pin has already been pulled. Every country holds someone else's IOU. Every promise is secured by another promise. It is a house of cards built in a wind tunnel. But there is a shadow layer. Above the governments, above the visible banks, There are the markets, the bond vigilantes, the hedge funds, the sovereign wealth funds, the faceless institutions that move trillions with a mouse click. They are the true emperors. They decide which country lives and which country dies. You think you live in a democracy? You think your vote matters? Think again. In 2022, the United Kingdom learned who really runs the country. Prime Minister Liz Truss announced a new budget. She wanted to cut taxes. The markets didn't like it. They thought it would increase debt too much. So they attacked. The bond vigilantes sold British debt aggressively. The British pound crashed to historic lows. The pension funds were hours away from total collapse. The Bank of England had to intervene. And Liz Truss? She was forced to resign within weeks. She was removed not by voters, not by Parliament, but by the bond market. When the markets scream, politicians kneel. The markets decide the interest rate. They decide the value of your currency. They decide the price of your food. They can destroy an economy overnight if they lose confidence. We saw it in Greece in 2010. We saw it in Argentina repeatedly. We saw it in Sri Lanka, where the government ran out of dollars and the people stormed the presidential palace because they were starving. And the high priest of this cult, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, the ECB, the Bank of Japan. These are unelected technocrats who control the destiny of billions. They don't manage the economy. They manipulate reality. Every time they buy a bond, they create money. Poof, out of nothing. They call it quantitative easing to make it sound scientific. It's not science, it's counterfeiting. If you did it in your basement, you would go to prison for 20 years. When they do it, they get a Nobel Prize. Listen to me closely, because this is the most important thing you will learn today. There is no such thing as debt-free money. In our system, money enters the economy only when debt is created. When you take a mortgage, the bank creates the money. When the government issues a bond, the Fed creates the money. If we paid off all the debt tomorrow, if every loan was settled, every single dollar, euro, and yen would vanish from existence. The system requires debt to exist. You cannot escape it because the money you use is the trap. This is why the debt can never be paid off, because paying it off would destroy the money supply. It is a mathematical prison. We are trapped in a room where the air we breathe is poison. But if we stop breathing, we die. For decades, this confidence game worked. As long as people believed, the wheel turned. But the cracks are showing. The walls are bleeding. The system is shaking. Look at Greece. The debt became unpayable. Did the bankers forgive it? Did they say, "We made bad loans, we will take a loss"? No. They demanded blood. They demanded austerity. That is a polite word for starvation. They forced Greece to sell its airports, its ports, its islands. They slashed pensions for old grandmothers. They gutted hospitals. Mass unemployment, suicide rates skyrocket. They stripped the country bare to pay the bondholders. Bailout is a lie. It was a robbery. The money didn't go to the Greek people. It went to the German and French banks that held the Greek debt. The people were sacrificed on the altar of finance. This is the model for the future. When the crisis comes to America or Europe, do not expect mercy. They will treat you just like they treated Greece. In Argentina, repeated defaults turned debt into a national curse. Inflation turned cash into trash. People carry backpacks of money just to buy groceries. In Turkey, inflation eats wages before they even hit the bank account. In Lebanon, the banks locked the doors and told people their life savings were gone. Stolen, vaporized. And yet, the machine restarts. New loans to pay old loans. Why? Because debt is not meant to be repaid. It is meant to be rolled over, forever. Governments do not plan to pay off their debt. It is not a bug. It is a feature. They treat debt like a subscription service. They issue new bonds to pay off old ones. Refinancing, a fancy word for kicking the can down the road. The global economy is addicted to this rent. It is a vampire that needs fresh blood every day. The United States will never pay off its $38 trillion. It will refinance it until the end of time. Japan has 250% debt to GDP. It's technically bankrupt, but the game continues. Why? Because the rich love government debt. To you, debt is a burden. To them, it is an asset. A U.S. Treasury bond is considered safe collateral. It is the foundation of the entire financial system. It is used in repo markets. It is used as margin. It is used to hedge risk. If the U.S. paid off its debt, the bond market would vanish. The billionaires would lose their safest asset. The banking system would have no collateral to lend against. So, the debt must exist. You must stay in debt so they can stay rich. They need you to be the host for their parasite. So, how does this end? There are only two exits from this burning building. Exit 1. Default. The government simply stops paying. Sorry, we are broke. The banks collapse immediately. Your ATM card stops working. Your pension fund goes to zero. The supply chain breaks. Chaos in the streets. This is the honest but painful way out. It resets the board instantly. Exit 2. Inflation. The government prints the money to pay the debt. They pay what they owe, but the money they pay with is worthless. History tells us they always choose exit 2. No politician wants to be the one who presided over a default, so they choose the coward's way out. They will print the $38 trillion. They will print the $100 trillion. They will devalue the currency to make the debt manageable. This is why your rent is going up. This is why you can't afford a house. This is why food costs double what it did 10 years ago. Imagine you have a pizza. That pizza represents the economy. The government cuts the pizza into 8 slices. You have 1 slice. That's your savings. Now, the government decides to cut the same pizza into 100 tiny slices so they can give 90 slices to their friends. Your 1 slice didn't change size physically, but now it's worth a tiny fraction of the whole. When they say, we owe it to ourselves, they are lying. You pay the taxes. They collect the interest. It is a transfer of wealth from the working class to the financial elite. It is the greatest robbery in human history, happening right in front of your eyes in slow motion. But the $315 trillion is just the tip of the iceberg. That is the debt we can see. The public debt. The terrifying part is what lies beneath the surface in the dark waters of the unregulated market. Derivatives. Derivatives are bets. Financial gambling. Bets on the price of oil. Bets on interest rates. Bets on currency fluctuations. Bets on whether a company will go bankrupt. Credit default swaps. The global derivatives market is estimated to be over $1 quadrillion. Let me say that again. $1 quadrillion. That is a 1 followed by 15 zeros. It is more money than exists in the entire world. It is a casino built on top of a house of cards built on top of a volcano. The banks are betting with your deposits. They are leveraged 20, 30, 50 to 1. In 2008, the system almost died because of a small subsection of this market, mortgage-backed securities. The next crash won't be a housing crash. It will be a sovereign debt crash. What happens when the bond market itself breaks? What happens when the collateral that backs the derivatives becomes worthless? Total systemic failure. The elites know this. Do not think they are stupid. They know the math doesn't work. They know the exponential curve of debt cannot go on forever. So, what is the plan? They will not pay it back. They will reset it. You are hearing the whispers now. CBDC, central bank digital currency. This is the end game. This is the prison door slamming shut. When the current system collapses, and it will collapse, likely through a hyperinflationary crisis, they will offer a solution. They will say, the dollar is dead, the euro is dead, cash is dangerous, it carries germs, it is used by criminals, use this new Fed coin, use this digital euro, it is safe, it is efficient, we will even drop free money into your account to get you started. But here's the catch. CBDC is not money. It is a control voucher. It is programmable. With CBDC, they can track every single transaction you make. They can put an expiration date on your money. Spend this stimulus check by Friday or it disappears. They can block you from buying certain items. You have reached your carbon limit for the month. No more meat for you. No more flights for you. They can freeze your account if you attend a protest they don't like. They want to move from a system where they manipulate the value of money to a system where they control the use of money. The debt crisis is the excuse they need to bring in this new system. You will own nothing, and you will be happy. That is not a conspiracy theory. It is the stated goal of the World Economic Forum. Creditors aren't just banks. They are the masters of the universe. Debtors aren't just countries. They are slaves. The line between money and debt has vanished. We are living in the final days of a 300-year-old Ponzi scheme. The music is stopping. The chairs are missing, but remember this. A promise that cannot be kept will eventually be broken. The system relies on confidence. It relies on you believing the lie. It relies on you getting up every morning, going to work, paying your taxes, and not asking questions, but the moment that belief shatters, the moment the world realizes the emperor has no clothes, the collapse will be biblical. This is not just about money. It is about freedom. They built a cage made of debt, and we walked right into it. But now you see the bars, now you see the lock, and you realize you hold the key. The engine is running out of fuel. The pyramid is shaking. The tectonic plates of finance are shifting. And when it falls, make sure you are not standing underneath it. Get out of debt. Own real assets. Gold, silver, land, Bitcoin. Things they cannot print. Things they cannot debase. The debt is real. The slavery is real. But so is the awakening. If this video opened your eyes, if it made you angry, then share it. Wake up your neighbors. The history books are lying to you. The news is lying to you. I will show you the truth. This is Money Trap. Subscribe, and never let them lie to you again.